I stopped explaining myself to people 50 years ago, and I haven't regretted a single day of it. There was a man. I never knew his name. He said 6 words to me on a train in 1969. I have been living by them ever since. 6 words. That is all it takes sometimes. 6 words from a stranger on the Chicago L. Everything else followed from that. My name is Robert Murphy. I am 81 years old. I grew up in Bridgeport, a South Side Chicago neighborhood where everybody knew everybody and nobody talked about feelings. My father was Patrick Murphy, construction worker. He came home tired, sat in his chair, watched the news. He did not say much. That was the model I grew up with. I had 3 brothers. We did not hug. We did not talk about problems. You handled things. You moved on. That was the only way anyone did anything in that house. At 16, I got a job at a warehouse on Halsted Street. At 21, I moved into an office. By 24, I thought I was going somewhere. I was wrong about the timeline, not about the direction. The company was called Hartley and Sons Insurance. I was nobody there, just a clerk, but I was good at the work, and I knew it. That combination, knowing your worth in a place that doesn't, is uncomfortable. My boss was William Harris. From the first week, he did not like me. I did not know why. I am not sure he knew why either, but I could feel it in the way he looked at me when I walked in. So I did what I thought you were supposed to do. I worked harder. I stayed late. I wrote reports nobody asked for. 6 months trying to convince a man whose mind was already made up. Have you ever spent months trying to convince someone of your value? Doing the right things, working hard, explaining yourself clearly, and watching it make no difference at all? One morning in November 1969, Harris called me into his office. He said, and I remember this exactly, "Robert, we're going in different directions." 2 minutes. Done. That was it. I walked out of that building onto Michigan Avenue. November. Cold. The kind of cold that gets into your bones and stays there. I did not know what I was going to tell my mother. I got on the L heading south to Bridgeport. The train was half empty. I sat by the window. Gray buildings, gray sky, gray everything. I was running everything through my head. An older man sat down across from me, maybe 65, maybe older. He had a coat that had seen better days and a newspaper folded on his lap. He didn't read it. He just looked out the window. We sat there for maybe 20 minutes without a word. Normal for Chicago. You don't bother people on the train. I was thinking about Harris, about what I should have said, about what came next. And then, out of nowhere, this man turned to me, not all the way, just enough. He said, "Don't explain yourself to people who've already decided." Then he looked back out the window. The next stop was his. He got up and walked off. I never saw his face clearly. I don't know his name. I don't know if he was talking to me, or to himself, or to no one at all. But something happened in me on that train. Something settled. Have you ever tried to convince someone who had already made up their mind about you? You talk, they listen, nothing changes, because they were never listening to understand. They were listening to confirm. I went home, and I did not explain anything to my mother. I just said, "I left the job. I'm figuring out what's next." She looked at me for a moment. Then she said, "Okay, Robert," and went back to the kitchen. In 1970, I met Carol O'Brien at a friend's birthday party in Logan Square. She was laughing at something across the room, and I thought, that is the laugh I want to hear for the rest of my life. Her father was Patrick O'Brien, old Irish. He'd worked the stockyards, saved enough to open a hardware store, never let anyone forget it. He did not approve of me. That was clear from the first phone call. He invited me to dinner. It was not a warm invitation. For 40 minutes he explained, calmly, thoroughly, why I was wrong for his daughter. My background, my finances, my plans, all of it insufficient. I sat there and felt the old impulse rise up. Explain yourself, Robert. Tell him about the contracts. Tell him about the truck you'll have by March. Tell him Carol makes you want to be better. And then I heard that voice from the train. Patrick O'Brien had decided long before that dinner, long before he met me. So I stood up. I thanked him for the dinner. I shook his hand. I said, "Sir, I understand." And I left. Carol was waiting outside. She said, "How bad was it?" I said, "We're getting married in 3 months." She laughed. Same laugh as at that party in Logan Square. I knew I was right. I am not saying you walk away from everyone. I am not saying you stop talking. But there is a difference between a conversation and an audition. When someone has already decided who you are performing for a judge who has written the verdict. We were married in September 1971 at St. Gabriel's Church on Emerald Avenue, Bridgeport. Patrick O'Brien did not come to the wedding. It was a small ceremony. 22 people. Carol was the most beautiful thing in that room. By 1975, Murphy Freight had 8 employees and 12 regular clients. Nothing glamorous. Boxes, pallets, delivery windows, but honest work. Work I understood. Work nobody could take from me because I had built it myself. In 1981, I brought in a partner, David Kane. Smart man. He knew financing. He knew how to talk to banks. I knew the work and the people. For 2 years, it worked well. Then it didn't. David wanted to expand fast, take on debt, open 2 new terminals, go for big contracts. I said we were not ready. He said I was afraid. That was the word he used, afraid. In the fall of 1983, I found out David had arranged a meeting with 2 investors without telling me. They were going to discuss restructuring the company. My company. The one I had built from 1 truck. I walked into that meeting unannounced. David was already talking. The investors were nodding. When I sat down, the room shifted in a way I recognized immediately. These men had already decided. David had given them his version. David started explaining my position for me, to my face, in front of these men, explaining what I thought, what I feared, why I was wrong. I sat there, and I waited for him to finish. When someone has already decided you are wrong, your words are just noise to them. The only language that moves people who have closed their minds is action, not louder words, not better arguments. Action. And then I said, very quietly, "Gentlemen, we have a disagreement. I am going to buy David out." David laughed. He thought I was bluffing. The investors looked uncomfortable. Nobody believed me. I was not bluffing. I sold my car. I took a second mortgage on the house on Wallace Street. Carol did not sleep for 3 weeks, but I bought him out. Every share, every cent. In 1985, David Kane's new company filed for bankruptcy. He had expanded too fast, taken on too much debt, exactly the way I said he would. I did not feel satisfaction. I felt tired and right. Murphy Freight is still running. My son Daniel manages it now. He has done well. Better than I did in some ways. He has patience I never had. But the company is built on the same foundation. Honest work, no bluffing. I am not telling you this to sound smart. I made plenty of mistakes. I was wrong plenty of times. But that day in the meeting room, I did not win by arguing. I won by refusing to argue at all. My son Michael is an artist. Oil paintings, mostly landscapes and portraits. He is good. better than I understood for a long time. I wanted him in the business. I thought I was building something for my sons. In 2004, Michael came to the house on Wallace Street. He was 31. He said, "Dad, you never understood what I was trying to do. You never supported me." He was not entirely wrong, and I wanted to explain everything. 30 years of decisions, what I had been afraid of, what I had hoped for him, why I pushed him the way I did. It was all right there, ready to come out. But I looked at his face, and I understood. He had already decided what kind of father I was, at least in that moment, at least on that day. And I heard again that voice from the train. So I did not explain. I said, "You might be right, Michael." And that was all. He left angry. Carol and I sat in the kitchen that night, and she said she always knew exactly what to say. Give him time. If I had explained that first day, he would have argued with my explanations. The silence gave him room to think on his own terms. That is the thing about not explaining yourself. It leaves space for the other person to fill. A month later, Michael came back, quietly. He sat down at the kitchen table and said, "I have been thinking about what you said." We talked for 2 hours, different conversation, different tone. He was asking, not accusing. Who in your life has already decided who you are? A parent, a sibling, a colleague, someone from years ago whose opinion of you calcified decades back and has not moved since. You know who. Carol died in 2019. We were married 49 years. She died in the house on Wallace Street, in the room where we had argued and laughed and raised 3 sons. She had been ill for a year. Near the end, when she could not talk much any more, I would sit next to her bed and hold her hand. No words, just that. 49 years of everything we had said to each other. And at the end, none of it needed to be said. I have been thinking about that man on the train a great deal lately. I do not know who he was. Maybe he was wise. Maybe he was just tired. Maybe he said that to everyone he sat across from. Maybe he never said it to anyone else. Save your words, save your energy, save your dignity. Stop explaining yourself to people who have already closed the door. It is not weakness. It is the clearest thing I know. I am 81 years old. I still don't know that man's name. I think about him almost every week. And whoever you are, if somehow, in some impossible way, you are out there, thank you. You gave a 24-year-old kid something he carried for 60 years.